nothing more exhausting than giving your heart to someone who's only giving you breadcrumbs in return. You tell yourself to be patient, to wait for him to change, to hope that the effort you're pouring in will eventually be matched. But deep down, there's a quiet voice whispering something isn't right. The truth? If a man is using a woman, he doesn't always come out and say it. He doesn't need to. His actions speak for him. In the silence, in the delays, in the patterns that leave you confused instead of confident. This isn't about blaming or bashing men. It's about protecting your time, your energy, and your worth. Because the moment you start recognizing the signs, you stop settling for crumbs and start expecting and receiving the respect you deserve. So let's get real. If a man is using a woman, he will show these 5 behaviors. Learn them, trust them, and don't excuse them. When a man is using a woman, one of the most telling signs is his inconsistency. At first, he might seem fully present, texting all day, planning dates, calling at night. He creates an illusion of commitment, showing just enough effort to win her trust. But that effort fades. He starts to disappear when it matters. His communication slows down, his energy changes, and yet, when he needs something, comfort, attention, or validation, suddenly he reappears like nothing ever happened. This inconsistency isn't accidental. It's not just because he's busy or bad at texting. It's a calculated rhythm, whether conscious or not. He does just enough to keep her emotionally hooked, but not enough to make her feel secure. 1 week, he's affectionate, attentive, and invested. The next, he's distant, cold, and hard to reach. She ends up on an emotional roller coaster. And the confusing part is she can't even pinpoint what went wrong. One moment they were close, and now he's treating her like a stranger. That kind of emotional tug of war creates anxiety. And when someone is in that anxious state, they stop thinking clearly. They start blaming themselves. Maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I was too needy. Maybe I should have played it cooler. And that's exactly what someone who's using you relies on. Your willingness to question yourself rather than question him. The reason this pattern is so damaging is because it teaches a woman to live on hope instead of reality. She's constantly holding onto the version of him that showed up during the good moments, thinking that if she can just be patient enough, that man will come back. But what she doesn't realize is that the inconsistency is the truth. The disappearing acts, the delays, the sudden mood swings, these are not exceptions. They're the pattern. When a man is genuinely invested, his effort isn't conditional. He doesn't only show up when it benefits him. He doesn't go radio silent when he's got what he wanted. His communication doesn't depend on whether he's bored, lonely, or looking for comfort. It's consistent because his feelings are consistent. He doesn't want to risk losing her, so he values connection, clarity, and commitment. He communicates even on the days when he's tired, stressed, or distracted. Because presence, even in small ways, matters. A man who's using a woman, however, views connection differently. To him, it's not about nurturing something real, it's about maintaining access. Access to attention, to affection, to validation. He doesn't see her heart as something to protect. He sees it as something to leverage. So he gives just enough to keep the door open, and when she starts to emotionally pull away, he rushes back in with just enough sweetness to stop her from walking. That's not love, that's manipulation. She might tell herself, but when we're together, it feels so real, and that's what makes it even more confusing. because those highs, those rare moments when he does show up, are often intense. Intimacy feels deep, chemistry is strong, and he may even say all the right things. But those moments are not sustained. They are not followed up with commitment or consistency. It's like being given a beautiful meal once a week and starving the rest of the time. You don't stay nourished just because one day he showed up with effort. You need consistency to build something real. Over time, she starts adjusting herself to fit the inconsistency. She stops bringing things up out of fear that she'll push him away. She becomes grateful for even the bare minimum, thinking it's more than she deserves. Her self-esteem takes a hit, and that's the goal, not consciously, but effectively, of someone who's using her. To keep her so uncertain, so hungry for validation, that she never stops to ask, wait, is this really what I want? The hardest part is that deep down, she knows something is off. Her gut keeps sending signals. But because he keeps offering flashes of affection or moments of connection, she convinces herself it's just a rough patch. She clings to potential, not reality. But reality is everything, because a man who cares will not make a woman question her place in his life. He will not be hot one day and cold the next. He will not treat her like a priority. Only when it suits him, he will be consistent, not because it's convenient, but because she matters. So when inconsistency shows up, don't explain it away, don't romanticize it, don't wait for it to stabilize. See it for what it is. A clear sign that someone is taking more than they are willing to give, and that is not love. That is used. When a man is using a woman, one of the most glaring red flags is his emotional unavailability. He might be present physically, maybe even charming and affectionate at times, but emotionally, there's a wall you can never quite get past. Conversations stay shallow. When she tries to talk about feelings, the future, or anything that carries emotional weight, he dodges, deflects, or shuts down. And what's worse, he often makes her feel like she's the one being too intense, too dramatic, or asking for too much. A man who is emotionally disconnected doesn't invest in a woman's heart, he only manages it. He gives just enough emotional breadcrumbs to keep her hopeful. He knows how to say something sweet when he needs to, how to look at her a certain way that makes her feel special, but there's no depth to it. He never really opens up, never shares his true thoughts, his fears, his past, or what he genuinely wants. He keeps the connection on a surface level because to go deeper would mean becoming accountable. And accountability isn't in the plan when someone is only there for what they can get. A woman in this situation often ends up doing all the emotional work in the relationship. She's the one asking the questions, trying to understand him, being patient with his moods, supporting his goals. She becomes more understanding than he deserves, more patient than she should be. And she convinces herself that her emotional needs are a burden rather than basic requirements for a healthy connection. But when a man truly cares, emotional investment isn't something you have to drag out of him. It doesn't mean he becomes a poet or starts pouring out his feelings daily, but he does make an effort. He wants to be known, not just admired. He wants to understand and be understood. He listens, he responds, he opens up gradually because he sees value in building something real. On the other hand, a man who's using a woman avoids this level of connection because it would tie him too closely to her. He doesn't want to be known in that way because then he'd have to show up more consistently, more honestly, more vulnerably, and that does serve his agenda. So he stays emotionally detached, often charming enough to keep her close, but never real enough to make her feel safe. He might even weaponize his emotional distance. When she brings up concerns or tries to deepen the relationship, he may twist it to make her feel like she's pressuring him or rushing things. That manipulation creates confusion. She starts apologizing for having needs, and she starts walking on eggshells, and slowly she loses herself trying to keep him. It's important to understand that emotional availability is not a luxury. It's not something extra that you hope to get once everything else is perfect. It's a foundational part of a real connection. Without it, there's no true intimacy, no growth, no trust. Without it, love becomes performance, not presence. And the longer a woman stays with a man who won't emotionally invest, the more she internalizes the idea that she's hard to love, that maybe she's too much, that maybe she's asking for something men just aren't willing to give. But that's a lie born out of being with someone who was never invested in the first place. The truth is, someone who cares will want to know how you feel. He'll want to share how he feels. He'll be willing to sit in uncomfortable conversations because your connection matters more than his temporary discomfort. He'll care when you're hurting. He'll notice when you're distant. And he'll talk to you, not just when he wants something, but because you're important to him. So if a man consistently avoids emotional depth, if he keeps the relationship emotionally hollow while benefiting from your love, time, and loyalty, understand what that is. It's not emotional immaturity. It's not fear. It's use. And no woman deserves to carry the weight of an entire relationship on her own. When a man is using a woman, the relationship starts to feel more like a transaction than a connection. It's not about love, effort, or mutual investment. It's about what she can provide and what he can gain. Everything he does is calculated around what benefits him, whether it's physical affection, emotional support, financial help, or even just ego validation. He takes freely but rarely gives back. If he does give something, it's often minimal and strategic, meant to keep her around long enough to keep serving his needs. The problem is, this doesn't always look obvious at first. He might be charming. He might say all the right things. He might act like he cares. But his actions reveal a different story. He shows up when he wants something and disappears when he's satisfied. He starts to notice the pattern. He only calls late at night. He only texts when he's bored. He only wants to hang out when it's convenient for him. The moment she needs something in return, support, time, reassurance, he becomes cold, unavailable, or irritated. That imbalance is not accidental. It's how he maintains control. In a healthy relationship, both people bring something to the table. They give without keeping score. But there's a natural flow of reciprocity. One person is never left feeling like they're carrying the emotional, mental, and sometimes even financial burden of the entire relationship. But when a man is using a woman, he's perfectly fine letting her give everything, while he does the bare minimum to keep the illusion of connection alive. He might praise her for being understanding, for being low maintenance, or for not being like other women, but these are not compliments. They're ways to condition her into accepting less, into tolerating his lack of effort, into being grateful for the crumbs he throws her way. She begins to believe that the little he gives is all she deserves, and the more she gives, hoping it will inspire him to do the same, the more depleted she becomes. A woman in this situation often starts to feel emotionally exhausted. She's constantly overextending herself, initiating conversations, planning time together, checking in on him, being his emotional support, lifting him up when he's down, but rarely receiving that same care in return. She starts to wonder, why do I feel so tired around someone who's supposed to make me feel loved? That's what happens when the relationship is draining you more than it's feeding you. And what's worse, if she ever tries to speak up about the imbalance, he flips it. He might accuse her of being ungrateful, too demanding, or overly sensitive. He'll make her feel guilty for having expectations, as if asking for basic respect or effort is too much. That emotional manipulation keeps her quiet. It keeps her giving, and it keeps him in control. A transactional relationship can also show up in more material ways. Maybe he's always borrowing money, expecting favors, relying on her resources, or living off her stability while making no real moves to stand on his own. And again, when she brings it up, he downplays it or turns it around, making it seem like she's selfish for not helping him. But in reality, help in a relationship should be mutual, not one-sided. It's one thing to support a partner who's trying and reciprocating in other ways. It's another to be constantly drained by someone who gives nothing back. The most painful part of this dynamic is that many women stay because they hope that all they're giving will eventually be rewarded. They think, if I love him harder, he'll change. Or if I keep showing up, he'll see how valuable I am. But someone who is using you doesn't suddenly learn to value you just because you give more. In fact, the more you give without boundaries, the more they take, not because they need it, but because they can. Real love is not transactional. It's not built on obligation or guilt. It's built on mutual respect, effort, and emotional generosity. Both people should feel safe, seen, and supported. Both should give, not because they have to, but because they want to. And when that balance isn't there, when one person is always giving and the other is always taking, it's not a relationship. Keep her from walking away. This stagnation isn't just frustrating, it's deliberate. It keeps her invested without him ever having to commit. At first, it might seem like he's just taking things slow. Maybe he says he's not ready or that he wants to see where things go. Those words sound harmless, even thoughtful, but months go by, sometimes years, and nothing changes. She finds herself in a holding pattern, waiting for the relationship to evolve, waiting for him to show up more fully, waiting for that conversation where he finally says, I want something real with you. But it never comes. Or when it does, it's vague and non-committal. A conversation filled with maybes, someday, and let's not rush. In truth, he doesn't want to move forward, not with her. He may like the benefits of the relationship, the comfort, the attention, the support, the physical intimacy, but he doesn't want the responsibility that comes with being a true partner. So he keeps her hoping, keeps her guessing, and keeps her in a cycle of emotional investment without ever fully showing up. It's a cycle that works in his favor, because as long as she's waiting, he doesn't have to change. This type of dynamic is emotionally exhausting. A woman starts to measure every interaction, every text, every moment of closeness as a sign that things are finally shifting. One good week convinces her he's getting there. One sweet conversation makes her believe that commitment is just around the corner. But then the distance returns. The indifference comes back. Plans for the future disappear again. And she finds herself right back where she started, waiting, wishing, hoping. The most painful part of this pattern is that it creates a false sense of progress, because he might not walk away entirely, and that alone can feel like a sign that something real is happening. He stays close enough to stay relevant, but far enough to avoid accountability. He doesn't fully leave, but he never fully commits. And that limbo is what keeps her stuck. She starts to confuse his presence with effort and his mixed signals with potential. But presence without progression is not love, it's convenience. And someone who truly wants to build something with you doesn't delay clarity. He doesn't leave you wondering where you stand. He makes his intentions known and backs them up with consistent action. He talks about the future and makes you a part of it. He doesn't treat commitment like a threat or a burden. He welcomes it because he wants to keep you, not just keep you around. When a man is using a woman, intimacy, but he doesn't want the responsibility that comes with being a true partner. So he keeps her hoping, keeps her guessing, and keeps her in a cycle of emotional investment without ever fully showing up. It's a cycle that works in his favor, because as long as she's waiting, he doesn't have to change. This type of dynamic is emotionally exhausting. A woman starts to measure every interaction, every text, every moment of closeness as a sign that things are finally shifting. One good week convinces her he's getting there. One sweet conversation makes her believe that commitment is just around the corner. But then the distance returns. The indifference comes back. Plans for the future disappear again. And she finds herself right back where she started, waiting, wishing, hoping. The most painful part of this pattern is that it creates a false sense of progress. And if a man reacts to clarity with distance, it's because he never intended to stay. There comes a point when a woman has to stop looking at the potential and start looking at the pattern. Has the relationship actually grown? Have his words turned into actions, or is she just reliving the same cycle, hoping that one day things will be different? Because the truth is, a man who's using a woman will never move the relationship forward. Not because he can't, but because he doesn't want to. And no amount of waiting, loving, or sacrificing will change that. She deserves more than empty promises and delayed intentions. She deserves a relationship that grows, evolves, and honors her heart. And when she finally stops waiting for change and starts demanding truth, that's when she'll break free from the illusion and make space for the love she truly deserves. And if a man reacts to clarity with distance, it's because he never intended to stay. There comes a point when a woman has to stop looking at the potential and start looking at the pattern. Has the relationship actually grown? Have his words turned into actions, or is she just reliving the same cycle, hoping that one day things will be different? Because the truth is, a man who's using a woman will never move the relationship forward. Not because he can't, but because he doesn't want to. And no amount of waiting, loving, or sacrificing will change that. She deserves more than empty promises and delayed intentions. She deserves a relationship that grows, evolves, and honors her heart. And when she finally stops waiting for change and starts demanding truth, that's when she'll break free from the illusion and make space for the love she truly deserves.